Friends, today is Friday, the 7th of August, and it's a beautiful morning once again in the cathedral here, and this time the light streaming through. A few clouds out there, but it looks like it'll be a beautiful August day. The gospel that we have today is quite a challenging one. Yesterday we celebrated the Feast of the Transfiguration, and this gospel immediately precedes it in the Gospel of Matthew, immediately precedes the Transfiguration. And logically, it would have been good to have had this first and then celebrate Transfiguration, because we would have seen the context into which that Transfiguration comes. Here's the context, the broader context, including our gospel today. Jesus makes his first prediction of the Passion, that he would enter Jerusalem, suffer at the hands of the Jewish and, of course, Roman authorities, be killed, and be raised on the last day, on the third day. And the disciples, of course, were shocked at this and fearful. Part of the background of the Transfiguration, when Jesus took Peter, James, and John up the mountain to indicate to them, here is where this path is headed. In other words, Lord, let us see your glory, that if we follow you, we will achieve as well. And with those thoughts, we have our gospel today, and the shock of the disciples was probably even much greater than hearing Jesus speak of his passion. Because it says that it won't be simply Jesus who will suffer and die, but it will be the disciples as well. Those who follow will also face the fate, the choice of Jesus himself, picking up his cross and suffering and dying for humanity. Our gospel says today, whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. In other words, the question is raised for the disciples. Jesus is willing to die for you. Are you willing to die for him? And here we mean that literally. And thus, following this passage is the Transfiguration. The disciples must have been in shock, confounded at what to do, who to follow, coming to the recognition that at the very center of Christianity is the cross and one's willingness to follow, to pick it up and to follow. And so Jesus takes them up the mountain. And I mentioned yesterday that Transfiguration is really centered on Peter, James, and John. It is they who are taken by the Lord up the mountain. It is they who see Moses and Elijah. Moses and Elijah appear before them, the cloud, the overshadowing cloud over them, and the voice to them, this is my beloved Son, listen to him. And to see the glory of Jesus. Whether that, of course, was the inspiration, the understanding of Jesus, seeing the glory of Jesus, the veil lifted in this theophany, whether that would draw them ultimately to the cross, well, the story continues to unfold. But the challenge given to the disciples, of course, is the same challenge given to us. We have to remember that the gospel today, and this is for the disciples and for ourselves, that Christianity also is the call and the path to conversion. The gospel tells us that nothing short of conversion will bring us to that glory. And, of course, all of us, humanly speaking, caught in this web of, well, everything that is not like Christ, the reason God sent his Son. But all of us were headed in direction pride, sin, self-gain, and so on, until all of humanity then receives the gift of Jesus. God sends his only begotten Son to us to move into what we might call the Father spoke of Jesus coming into a far country where we live. St. Augustine summed it up so beautifully by speaking of the fact that we have drifted into the region of unlikeness. Drifted into the region of unlikeness. That unlikeness to the image of God in which we have been created. The challenge in our gospel, of course, is unless you lose your life, you will not gain it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. And then that challenging line, which is so appropriate for today in our world, competition and so on, it says, what profit would there be for one to gain the whole world and to forfeit his life? Making that pact with the devil to gain the whole world, but in the process, forfeit one's life, in the process to move into that region of unlikeness. You know, I can speak personally here, and probably quite a confession, but I remember when I was first ordained, fresh out of the Roman universities, fresh out of the Roman system, I saw very clearly how one, with his ambition perhaps, and ambition is not a good word when it comes to the priestly life, but I could see how one would move upward if one was ambition in the church. Here's what you do. Here's who you talk to. Here's who you meet. This is the plan. And you can move ahead. And I remember that's when I learned about this land, this region of unlikeness, because the confessor told me, well, yes, you probably could advance. And who knows, bishop, cardinal, know the right people, do the right things. Forget about what is most important. Forget about the truth. Advance yourself. And that's when he quoted to me from the Confessions of St. Augustine, in which Augustine says, I entered into myself, and by my soul's eye, such as it was, I saw above the eye of my soul, above my mind, an unchangeable light. I trembled with love and awe, and found myself to be far from you in the region of unlikeness. The region of unlikeness. Yes, to give all your efforts towards advancement, and in the process lose your soul. Lose your soul. In other words, to lose more than you would ever gain. And hopefully I came to my senses moving out of that land of unlikeness. The unlikeness refers to the image of God. We move into a land in which we no longer reflect the image in which we were made. And that's what the gospel is about today, the cross, to return to that image into which we were created and to reflect that image into the world. And why should we do that? Well, there's a negative and there's a positive. The negative is, of course, we'll be judged. We'll be judged according to our words and actions. And, of course, if all we're interested in is self-gain, how many more things do we lose? But the good reward, of course, is the glory, going up that mountain with the Lord, the veil lifted, seeing the glory of God, the glory that we hope to share. Hold that thought, and we'll see you tomorrow.